Oh, I'm good, man.
Well, Bob, thanks for helping with my project.
Thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I could. So yeah, I'm glad to. It's good to be here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm my background. I was born and raised in this state and here in the United States called Mississippi. I have an engineering degree in petroleum engineering from Mississippi State. I've worked for Shell for 35 years as a petroleum engineer in different kind of jobs. I also worked in college as for different oil companies as well. So I retired from Shell about 8 years ago. It was truly a win-win. They were glad for me to retire, and I was happy to retire as well. So it's what you always hope for.
Win-win.
Yeah. I've been married for 42 years.
Oh wow! I just celebrated my 25th year
You know
marriage
what?
anniversary.
It's I'll tell you that as you're a math guy. You look at the statistics. Making it 5 years is not a lead pipe cinch anymore. 25 years. Oh man.
I think it's
To the
because-
same person?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that have been married 25 years. It's just
I've got a brother.
20 people.
Yeah, he's on his fifth. Yeah, and none of them worth it.
I think it's. I mean, I guess we live in such a consumeristic society. People get married because it's like the thing of the moment, and then once it doesn't work, then they're like, "Oh, I wanted something else." They don't work it out.
Nobody wants to be alone. Now, after 42 years of marriage, lonely looks different.
Yes, I know.
So Kathy and I do have two children. Our son is 38, 39, 45, 46, 42 years of no, he's 38. And he's a professor up at University of Memphis.
Okay.
He teaches sports business. And his wife is a nurse up there. Both of them went to Texas A&M. He got his PhD there. I foolishly said, "You know what, Michael? You get your PhD, and I'll go back to school to get my master's. Just to encourage you." And so he did, and I'm a man of my word. So I did. It took me 5 years, one class a semester, working. I full-time manager at Shell. It was a heck of a lot of fun. Really neat people.
It took me 12 years to get my bachelor's.
I understand. Yeah, no, I did a bachelor's in 5, and I still acknowledge the greatness of God for me getting through. And the math. I mean, you're a math goober. I can easily tell you my math progression. Calculus 1, Calculus 1. Calculus 2, Cal 2, Cal 3, that was twice. Cal 4, Cal 4 and differential equations I took the same semester. And I made a D in Cal 4 and an A in differential equations. And my dad, the math major,
Wow.
simply couldn't understand
Sure.
how that could be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then matrices and linear algebra, well, I passed. So, I'm sure you've had a much different educational process than me, guys. So, I get my master's, as I told you, in industrial engineering, and retired 3 months later.
I mean, my thing was my grandmother paid for my first 2 years at Houston Baptist University.
Uh-huh.
I had this brilliant idea. I wanted to move out of the house and pay for myself, and so that's what resulted in the last
I understand.
10 years.
Yeah, no, I actually did a couple of years of junior college, and worked, full time. But yeah, it's our daughter is 33, and she's a nurse practitioner. So she got a degree from A&M and couldn't find a job, and so she went back and got nursing degree and decided she wanted to be a nurse practitioner. So, you know, anytime I have a venereal disease that crops up, you know, she's able to help me out.
It's good to have resources.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You don't have to worry about them going bad. You know, yes. You know, I'd say, you know, half of all that I have is yours, honey. So she's promised it'll be a quick death.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, you know, it could be worse.
It could be.
So there, that's kind of me, man.
Well, did you know that NASA is planning to send astronauts back to the moon?
Well, you know, if you follow some of the websites I do, they would maintain that astronauts never left the moon. I've seen some really great YouTube videos. You know, it's I was reading an article over the last several days about, you know, Kennedy's speech at Rise in what, 62, 63, because he went from
62,
Rise.
actually.
Okay, yeah.
Because they had a special event for the 60th year anniversary.
Okay.
This year.
And just what a challenge that was, because, you know, the U.S. That sounds like a Black Hawk right there.
Yeah, it might be.
No, we have a 64 flying by.
It's really low too.
Yeah, it's got the link. Well, you know, the airport's right over here, and they'll do touch and goes. Yeah, that is a fine aircraft. Although, you know, I don't know how much you keep up with that, but it looks like they're going to be replacing those with the Bell Valor, the tilt. Yeah, they just announced it yesterday. So anyway, we were speaking about Kennedy and the moon, and just the remarkable progression of technology that we saw over 7 to 8 years to get those guys on the moon. You know, I remember we were on vacation in July in 1969 with our mom and dad, and listening on the radio to the whole moon. You know, Armstrong, one small step for man. It's kind of one of those things like 9/11. Most people of my age remember where they were at. So, you know, the article I read went on to try to break down, you know, kind of what's the intrinsic value proposition for going back to the moon versus robotics. You know, my sense. Huh?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
no
that's
worries.
okay. You know, my sense is that NASA certainly is having to grapple with that, with what they do with Mars. But you know, I don't think we can any cost benefit analysis can be complete without both qualitative and qualitative assessments. Yeah, sure, we can sit down and start saying, well, what directly have we pulled out of the space program? Fiber, although some people think that came from the alien spaceships at Area 51. Yeah. The technologies around, there's a number of patents around things like anti-gravity, stealth. We can argue all day about, is that worth it or not, but certainly, kind of those whole areas of technology are branching. The medical, I know there's been a number of cancer progressions that have made when we can see how these cells change in microgravity. So, personally, I'm just a simple country boy. I think there's a whole element of national pride that is completely overlooked. Back in the early 60s, the U.S. was behind, another peer state, and, men in space, satellites launched. We were looking at Hein Tit there. And we saw Kennedy and from the public side, we saw him interject this hope of, yeah, we can be better than we are. Now, consequently, you read some of the engagements between Kennedy and NASA. There's some speculation that John Kennedy didn't actually believe we could do it. So, Coleridge says, what are heavens for? And that's kind of my view towards investments in space. Let's get right down to it. Would I rather see $7 billion go to a Gerald Ford class aircraft carrier, or go towards a long-term presence on the moon?
And what's your answer?
It's personally, I keep coming back to what are heavens for? What are heavens for? With your background, you've been exposed to all sorts of philosophy classes. Not a philosopher, but my sense is that the human spirit is not simply to survive. So, we were laughing about thermodynamics earlier. In equal out, summation of n equals 0. And I don't think that is no different than the raccoon that climbs this tree, or the opossum. I exist, to balance my caloric intake versus mountain. And I don't think that the human experience is that. I think Coleridge had it right. What are heavens for? We must have heavens. My personal theism aside, we see an awful lot of evidence that ancient civilizations even, start, appreciating that there's some other reason for why we're here. It's I have my own personal feelings on that. Other people do too, but it does point to this segment of our psyche that is more than just existing. So I tell you that I would have absolutely no qualms. But hey, I kind of circling back around to tell us about yourself. I was listening to a press conference from the Prime Minister of Finland yesterday, day before yesterday. My short-term name. I purged my buffer after 48 hours.
That's a good thing to do.
Yeah, no.
Everything should be purged.
Oh, yeah. Hours. There is absolutely no guilt or conscience after 48 hours. Man, it's gone.
Reset.
Reset. Push the button. But the Prime Minister of Finland was talking about Europe and being really unprepared for what's going on right now in Europe with a conflict. And her comment was, if it were not for the United States, money and material and support, Europe would be in a bind. And she said, Europe needs to do better at funding that. And my comment was, we're providing that at the expense of healthcare, at the expense of, these other, perhaps less immediately practical, but ultimately fulfilling. So, as you can tell, some of the roles I've had as a professional required me to beat around the bush quite a bit and choose my words. I think absolutely. I personally, I'm not even focusing on the moon. I'm sitting here scratching my head about Mars.
Right.
Radiation. What does that do? We know what that does to human cells. Is robotics the way to go, or does is this guy down in NASA who just floated through these patents over the last couple of years about warp drive? There's been some experiments down at NASA about warp drive, Alcubierre drives. So I think I saw something that actually indicated that on a quantum level, they may have demonstrated some of that teleportation. So where does that go? I don't know, but I know that doesn't go anywhere if all I'm worried about is, how I'm going to take my next breath, how I'm going to get my next meal.
I know if we didn't discover electromagnetism, imagine what the world would be like.
Well, yeah. I don't think people realize that every one of these vehicles, everything that turns around, except for the wheels on the baby stroller in there, are driven by that. No clue. There again, we could talk about Tesla as well, but it's another day. So yeah, I would love to see more focus. I'd also love to see. If we want to be a world-class country, we need to have world-class healthcare.
I mean, the problem is, I think what we have now is not healthcare but sick care.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm blessed that we can afford whatever healthcare we want. We have insurance, and a lot of folks don't. That discussing this with my daughter's a nurse practitioner, her husband who was here helping me with lights as a emergency medical technician, and they deal with folks who don't have those means every day. It's
But even if you have health insurance, it could still not work out for you because you end up at a hospital and they're like, you have good health insurance, we can give you every test you can, give you every procedure we can, and nobody's really held accountable to the outcomes.
Oh yeah, no, that's So I just went on to Medicare, and there is a measure of accountability that comes through Medicare, but it's only on a financial perspective. It's not on a performance basis. Did he live?
I want a doctor that gets rewarded for every day that I'm like jump out of bed and feel like running a marathon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hey, you're doing good.
Yeah,
you're doing good.
Keep me at that level, and you take all the money you want.
Yeah. But dragging back to NASA, it's should we spend every dime we have as a country? No, I mean it's no different than you and me balancing our budget and saying what we're going to spend money on, what are we not. And, there's hard choices, but there's also a balance there. I think most folks, my sense is that as lawmakers, the House is responsible for funding and things like that, and it's when you're looking at 3-month performance, corporately 3-month, quarterly, annual performance is about as far as you see. It's really hard to look at anything other than a really quantitative cost-benefit analysis. There are some decision analysis techniques, utility models that kind of help position you to look at more than a broader cost-benefit analysis. My sense is that what value can you put on national pride? I think there are ways to do that, and then how much is that worth? Yeah, so that's the crux of all our decisions as professionals.
Yeah,
is doing that. Okay.
Exactly.
I beat around the bush a lot, but I'm like, hey, the moon, man, we've been there. Let's do something with it. And I don't want to just urinate money, urinate money away either. If we can't build a case for some longer term benefit coming from the moon, okay, well, let's look at Mars, or Venus is starting to crop up, or you know what, if there really is that warp drive, the Star Trek that Kirstie Alley, Lieutenant Saavik said there was,
right?
Then there's a few really good looking Earth-like planets that have just been announced within 40 light years or so. So let's do something. Let's expand the human experience.
I like that.
Yeah, it's and I know everybody. Yeah, I'm not talking to the camera. I'm talking to you. But I know everybody looks at those sorts of things differently. But I know enough about your background to know that mathematics is simply a language. It's simply a language. And so what do we use languages for? Well, we use languages to communicate. How do we communicate with mathematics? We do things. We identify problems, inequalities, greater thans and less than, greater than or equal to's, less than or equal to's, and then we solve them.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe kind of if you distill that whole experience down, there is as an engineer, I like to solve problems. If it's just as simple as figuring out how to hang up my Christmas lights without my wife yelling at me for being on the ladder. And I can tell you, I've worked with plenty of math guys in my industry, because the company I work for, Shell, they love to take people who didn't have specialty engineering degrees and make them engineers. We had, I don't know if we had people from HBU. We had a number of math guys from Rice, and we all think generally the same way. Solve things, fix things,
find a relationship between things.
Yeah, no, it's correlation is not causality. It took me a long time to appreciate that, but yeah, just because, which gets to another fun graduate class, graduate statistics at A&M. We'll rip your hemorrhoids, man. That was tough.
Tough, huh?
Yeah, that was tough. So, yeah, I was 30 minutes to answer your question, but it's awful lot of neat stuff. It's interesting watching. Armstrong was always after he left NASA, he was a professor at some engineering school, and he always seemed pretty somber when he talked about those few hours that he was on the moon. Aldrin, he took a little different approach. He beat the hell out of people who challenged him. There was a couple of times that he popped people, and Michael Collins, I think, was the there was a time that he was the loneliest human in the universe.
Alone, circling the moon.
Are they going to be able to get back or not? Because they weren't sure. Am I going to have to leave them there? So it's and most people, I'm sure you have read Nixon's speech that he had prepared, in case something happened.
Oh, I haven't actually.
Oh yeah, no,
I need to read that.
Oh yeah, it's that one of the quotes I remember from that was that fate has decided that those who went to the moon in peace will remain there in peace.
Oh wow!
And and it was much like Eisenhower's
D-Day
letter. Yeah.
D-Day.
So it's and one of the guy that wrote it was a Republican speechwriter, but he also, I forget his name, but he's well known, and it was just a really moving thing. And I think folks forget, Apollo 1,
the fire.
Yeah, Grissom, White, Chaffee were there, and it wasn't quick.
They knew what was happening.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
They were able to call out.
You listen to the tapes?
I've only read the transcripts.
Yeah.
I didn't know the tapes were available.
Maybe it was just the transcripts I saw. But and they still haven't, published the formal. Well, maybe there was some postmortem stuff I saw, but it was pretty obvious that. Well, it was quick compared to say cancer. But you know, it was, and then all those poor souls with Challenger, with the shuttles, that you know, it's there's a cost for reaching for the stars.
Sometimes you fall off the ladder.
Well, you know, and yeah, I'm solid as a rock, even before my jar of wine. Then so, you've got me rolling. And then you read about the Soviet program, and if you know, if you kind of say, well, you know, I'm going to normalize this. I'm not going to make this a kind of a national / regional thing. I'm going to make this more of a kind of, you know, like the Wide World of Sports ad used to be, you know, the whole scope of human endeavor. You know, the Russians lost a lot of folks in space. You know, some of the recordings that alleged recordings. I mean, you know, there's some speculation that these two Italian guys fabricated some of this, but some of the recordings from these guys that, you know, one woman apparently as well, that I knew they wanted to make it back. And so, you know, I think, you know, so we talk about what are heavens for, but I propose that conversely, culturally, that the United States is not, you know, it would be hard for us to make the sacrifices that we saw, say, in World War II. Millions, hundreds of thousands dying. You know, we are not even willing to accept that space is a high-risk business. And frankly, you look at kind of the Bayesian statistics of this, and we're still underrepresented as far as fatalities go. So, you know, and so, you know, are we? How much sacrifice and how much adversity are we really interested in accepting? I think maybe that's what's different than 1960.
I know, we were willing to charge for, I mean, we just came out of World War II. Dying wasn't considered to be as bad.
Well, there was a mindset of sacrificing, you know, for a greater purpose.
That there would be costs. Now we're in like the complete safety age where every death is like,
you know, and you know, and I will freely acknowledge that, you know, I mean, just last night I sat in the driveway with a couple of my neighbors, and he's got younger sons, you know, 24 to 17. And, you know, and I shook my finger and said, not one drop of your boy's blood should be spilled for Taiwan. You know, yeah, there's some commercial issues. Yeah, sure. But, you know, it's, you know, from an international relations standpoint, what's the value of an American life?
But I guess just going back to World War II, you know, if the U.S. got involved
oh, you're
earlier.
good at this. Yeah, I've been entrapped here somehow.
Sorry.
I feel it. Oh, no, I've done it before. I understand, yeah.
But, I mean, like in World War II, you know, we were like, we were still reeling from World War I, or the Great War, as they called it at the time. And we're like, we're not going to spill any blood for Europe. And then, you know, Japan kind of brought us into it. Just wonder, you know, could we have short-circuited that a little if we were a little bit more involved and willing to spill blood? I mean, so.
You know, it's, you know, you kind of look at that time, you know, especially the 20s and early 30s, and now, you know, you see that after World War II, it's almost a pole shift in foreign policy.
Oh, I know. People were like, we can't have that again. And like the nuclear weapons, and I mean the creation of the UN.
Well, yeah, UN. Yeah, and I'll fall back to kind of the Finland's prime minister and what she said. You know, I mean, she acknowledged it, that you know, the U.S. is a reason we're still fighting, fascism in Ukraine. It is, we don't have health care unless we pay for it ourselves. But you know what? They're more than willing to help us kill folks.
I know.
Their weapons are really good.
I know.
And we'd be toast without them. So, I keep coming back to that. But as I get older, I'm learning to not categorize myself with a particular party. I'm way more aligned with, kind of more focused things. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that works.
Wandered off, man. I wandered off. But you brought me back to World War II.
But you actually saw the first moon landing back in 1969. You must have been.
I was listening to it. We were on vacation in Colorado, and we brought out the battery operated. We were camping. Brought out the battery operated radio to listen to that. I didn't see it at the time. Although, some folks might imply it never happened. It was, in some movie studio. I think it probably was time delayed.
Did that cross your mind at the time? I mean, at the time, did you think this is real, or did you have doubts?
Yeah, well, for me, I was 12 or 13 years old, so I never thought about it. I can tell you that I've kind of following a rabbit trail. Now I know that the lunar satellites have taken pictures of all the landing sites, and we can see the limb base there, and actually some can see some evidence of the footprints even.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Well, I imagine we've seen it in much more detail than that, but we're just not telling. So, so certainly something landed there, and somebody left things there, rovers and things that, so yeah, no, it's there, there ain't no upside for lying about that. No upside at all.
I mean, eventually you'll be find out.
Yeah.
And plus the Russians, they could have, hey, that signal is not coming from the moon.
Yeah, well, they actually did have a craft that crashed into the moon within a day or so of Armstrong and Aldrin landing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they did. They were.
Oh, wow.
And they bored in. They were doing their best to make a soft landing, and things didn't work out.
Kind of made it made its mark.
Yeah, no, they left a mark. That's for sure.
A mark. Where do you see humanity in, say, 200 years? Are we still only on this planet, or do you think we've actually on this planet plus other places?
I think there is a probability greater than zero that we're already there.
So, already now?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Ben Ridge.
I don't know Ben Ridge.
Yeah, he was the head of Lockheed Skunk Works. And right before he died, he said, and this was 10 years ago, so SR-71, U-2, and other things they don't talk about. So he was the brains behind it. He said, the technology that exists is decades ahead of what we are aware of right now. We have the technology to take E.T. home again.
Wow.
And so, this guy was dying from cancer. And, maybe he lied. Yeah, maybe he was a liar. And, which is why I'm not saying, I think there's a 75% probability. But I think the probability is greater than zero.
That we've actually already become multiplanetary.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
No. Yeah, no, and I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat or anything like that. But, man, I think it was Pais, P-A-I-S, was the last name of the guy out of NASA that filed patents here a couple of years ago that the patent, out of NASA for anti-gravity. There was a couple of anti-gravity patents and something else. He filed the patents, and the U.S. Patent Office were rejecting them because they said this, this is just fantasy. And actually, was it the director of NASA? I think it was the director of NASA that dealt with the U.S. Patent Office and said, no, there's nothing, can't tell you a lot of details, but I can tell you that there's nothing in these patents that they're not supportable. You heard that?
I have not.
Oh yeah. It's and so so I got it. Look it up. It's really interesting because it sounds like fruitcake. And then you see maybe it's just really shrewd positioning by our intelligence services to throw all our peer states off, to send them in different directions. But the probability is not zero.
It's not zero.
Yeah.
But I think the proof is in the pudding, as they say. I mean, the key is constructing a device that demonstrates the effect in a useful, convincing way.
It's and so it takes visionaries to paint that picture. It doesn't. So okay, what do I care? Bob? Why does Bob care if there's a warp drive? I'll Cubase drive. What if that's and because if it's just for fulfilling this kind of latent need for innovation, it's a lot harder to put a value on that. I'm a petroleum engineer, so I'm minerals. Minerals. That certainly that might well be a part of it, but it gets into a way more esoteric discussion about reaching for the stars and what does that mean. I think it was Asimov. You see? Yeah, surprise. See what you wandered into here. I do read a lot of this shit.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think Asimov said, it's the probabilities. He was convinced that life existed outside of our own planet. I'm not even going to say solar system, just based on the statistics, of
Right.
M class and solar systems.
Number
and
of
things.
stars, those that can support life like ours, planets.
I can tell you, as an evangelical Christian, that is not inconsistent. The intersection of those, life somewhere besides Earth, and my beliefs as an evangelical Christian, the intersection of that is nothing else.
I often think back to the parable that Jesus told about the landowner going away on a trip and giving one servant 50 pieces of gold, another. Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like if we have the capability, it's almost incumbent on us to go and move forward.
That's I think that's a really good challenge. If you don't use what you have, what do you lose? Well, oh Lord, here we go. I'm not sure that isn't some sort of at least corollary with capitalism.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. No,
to produce.
Yeah, my
more
mind
with
goes
less.
to Engels, Marx, and
The
maybe
key part
Kant
is,
wrote about that.
the key part is competition. You can't have somebody completely dominate the market to the extent that you can.
Well, certainly in a capitalistic society, yeah. Well, yeah. Stop. Yeah, I can tell you that my electricity is deregulated here in Houston, And I pay quite a bit less per kilowatt hour than my son does in Tennessee, where it's not. On the other hand, there are some things where I think there probably is some public benefit to monopolies. Well, I mean, let's say nuclear power. Ultimately, okay, maybe these different utility companies are building nuclear plants. They're all regulated by the NRA. So, so in a sense, that drives monopoly. There's little flexibility in how you do things other than how you're told you have to do things. I had a really good thought on monopolies that just completely left my mind. So anyway, it'll probably come back to me. So I'll summarize. I am not at all convinced that's not part of the human condition. I think the application for Jesus' parable of the talents, that really could be a good one, in that but there's other scriptures that support it as well, and I think there's something in Peter about using the gifts that you've been given. You've been given a gift that you can get through differential equations. 1 and 2 would be my guess.
Well, used to back in 2005. But
yeah.
Don't know if I could do it today.
Yeah. Yeah. How quickly will the sink fill up if the stopper's open?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. The shape of the sink and the input and output and.
Yep. No. So it's.
And then if you have somebody tossing dishes in of various sizes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's great. And then designing a water distribution system. What was your question?
I don't know, but I have a different.
Oh, good. I don't feel so bad.
I have a different one.
Sure.
I feel like that this decade is going to be the decade where space really becomes available. I think the 2020s are going to be the space that the 1990s were to the internet.
So we were talking about competition, and that's where I wanted to go. Is that it sounds bad. I don't mean to. I love NASA, SpaceX.
I know.
Blue Origin.
Mm-hmm. Well, Blue Origin, I'd like to see them do something. That would be cool.
Yeah, but even the talking about it, even just the talking about it is has driven performance.
And you see NanoRacks, Astrobotics, Intuitive Machines, Firefly Aerospace, Rocket Labs. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of Axiom Space.
So competition's good.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there was a number of regulations that were loosened up to be able to enable competition in the space business. And kind of as a guy with a really extensive background in project economics, it's unless there's something notably separating, you can go with the lowest cost.
Yep.
And I think we're seeing some of that. A private company supplying our space station. It's been doing it. The Falcon. One could argue that that's freed up more limited resources within our national agencies to be able to pursue Orion or Artemis or whatever. Okay. But, I can tell you the spacesuits those guys are wearing don't look anything like the spacesuits that they wore 40 years ago. It is just super interesting to me about how competition in that environment. So, okay, let's take that one more step. If we're pretty pleased with that, if private ventures are willing to take that risk, which is really what it is. Now, I think there is some kind of risk mitigation that's provided minimum payment stuff and things like that. But should we stop there? I mean, we're just kind of talking about space station and all, but I think Musk has talked about Mars, colonizing Mars.
Absolutely, that's his dream, making humanity multi-planetary.
Yeah, and is the moon that place? Yeah, if I'm simple, so the moon's another planet to me. It's rock, it's somewhere else, microgravities and things. But I think that competition is a good thing. There's all the underlying, as long as there's always a question about safety. What's hard to quantify the risk to human life, and what is there a value for that? And we could talk about that one all day too. But ultimately, you balance the risk with the benefits, and you let competition take its course.
Yeah. I mean, the more players you have doing different things, the more chances you are of improving things. I mean, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you'll never improve.
God, most of the innovative guys that I worked with, and I was blessed. God blessed me to work with some really, really sharp guys. 95% of their ideas just wouldn't work, but the other 5%, you make a heck of a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's really moved the technology step forward. We can oil and gas, so whatever. It's not green, it's killing the planet. But we saw remarkable technology steps when folks were given the environment to fail. Personally, I was telling our son-in-law this. I remember back in the early 90s, the company was going through another cultural transformation.
Yes.
And the one thing that I pulled away from that, besides finding out that the person on my left and the person on my right were going to be fired, was having to learn that it's okay to say, I don't know. Because corporately, and I think probably more than that, professionally, it was hard for us to say, I don't know. People would be penalized. Oh, you're supposed to know this. What? So learning to say, I don't know, was a big deal for us. But, what we saw was that it really affected how people engage each other, relationships, and just even from a workplace perspective, we saw a safer workplace because of, I don't know, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to say, I don't know.
Acknowledgement of ignorance is better than false knowledge.
Oh man, absolutely. Well, yeah. And the axiom, of course, is, the definition of insanity is to continue to do the same thing over, expect different results.
I like to say, don't let looking smart keep you from actually becoming smart.
Yeah, I think that's true. So, I think we have to, and obviously I'm sure you're getting a lot of different perspectives from talking to a lot of different people, but I just want to know.
Yeah.
I just want to know, it's, we could break this. We could obviously break this down. Well, Bob, how much of your personal money are you willing to pay into it? Well, would you rather feed the hungry or go to Mars? Would you? And folks are hard on Congress. Those are the decisions they have to make. We elect them to make those decisions. Well, what about health care versus this versus what about the children in elementary school who can't afford their lunch? And kind of my counter to that is there is some basic level of human needs that need to be met regardless. If we are a civilized society, if we're not anarchy,
Mm-hmm.
If goobers aren't marching up and down my street out here trying to break into my house, you know, there's a basic level of services that I believe come with being a citizen of the United States. And you know, and I'll tell you that there's a lot of my conservative friends who might disagree with that, and that's fine. You know, I don't punish people for having a different opinion than I do, but you know, it's yeah, that's how I feel. That's how I feel. So I just, you know, we had a younger person that worked for me. She was up in Calgary, and probably 20 years young, you know, mid-30s, and she was diagnosed with cancer.
Mm.
And well, I looked, said, "Hey, yeah, it's a hard time. You know, I want to make sure you appreciate that we got a spot for you in Houston to be close to MD Anderson, and we really don't need to see you."
Wow, that's very generous.
Yeah, so it's the right thing to do. It's what I would want somebody to do for me, and her position was, no, I'm gonna stay here in Calgary.
Mm.
And so, you know, she had to, you know, and in her case, it would have been all paid for.
Mm.
But you know, she I think she felt uncomfortable coming into to our environment just because there was, in her perception, there wasn't this kind of basic services level like she was accustomed to.
Mm.
So yeah, it was kind of interesting, and frankly, at the time, but even now, our company had a program that any cost at MD Anderson were free. So, you know, it's I look at that and then I say, well, yeah, and there's an awful lot of people who don't have that. And yeah, daughter of the nurse practitioner has to deal with folks who, who are not in a position to be able to take care of their health unless there's a problem. And you know, we can make those decisions, but it does bother me a little bit that folks have to make that decision. Okay, I choose not to get my prostate checked. You know, yeah, fine, but not getting it done because I don't think I can afford it. Where does life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness start and stop?
I know, especially depending upon, you have this one guy that has this really great insurance, he gets everything, and this other person...
And I'm that person, I mean, God has really blessed our family with that ability. But, it's, this discussion, I keep coming back around to social issues, and I apologize. But, I mean, that's a huge trade-off.
It's all about people.
Well, yeah, and money.
Mm-hmm.
And money. So, yeah, okay, sorry.
Have you ever read the beginning of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Indeed, I have.
I love the first paragraph.
There's
I think
a
it's
few
so
books,
brilliant.
in fact.
Yeah, but the first paragraph is worth kind of reading regularly. But it talks about how humanity came from the ocean and then went to the trees, and they invented digital watches, and most of the people were unhappy most of the time. But the solution was to move around green pieces of paper. But the green pieces, which is weird because the green pieces of paper weren't unhappy.
Yeah, no, not at all. That was an interesting, thought-provoking book, along with, of course, 1984 and Watership Down.
I haven't read Watership Down. 1984, Brave New World, Animal Farm. What is it? What's that one where the kids get stranded on the island? And,
Lord Jim.
Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies. That's
Lord of the Flies. So those
Heinlein?
Heinlein? I love Heinlein.
Robert Heinlein?
I
Starship
like-
Troopers is my favorite.
You like Starship Troopers?
Absolutely, and I like it for the social statements that it makes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, but it's
How about Stranger in a Strange Land?
yes, I have. What was that one? Farnhold's Freehold. That's so weird.
That's the one where they have like the bomb shelter.
Yeah,
and then they
and
get transported to the future.
And it's and even the reviewers can't make it's okay. You caught me.
Yeah,
You caught me.
only Africa survived, and basically the United States becomes like a hunting ground.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
kind of like reversing roles. I love that. Or Job. There's another one. If you want the comedy of Job.
No.
So,
Oh, thank you. Hey, I'm not finished yet. Come help me.
if you could take a trip to space, would you?
Yeah, I would.
Like, how far would you go? Just to orbit? A week to the moon? Or would you immigrate to Mars?
So I'll restate the obvious. I'll admit it. I'm intrinsically selfish. I wouldn't want to leave my grandchildren. Hey, if they weren't in the picture, absolutely I would.
What if they wanted to go?
I'd go with them.
Yeah.
I would go with them, especially the grandchildren. Son and daughter, I love them. We've had 35, 40 years together. But my granddaughters, my grandsons, absolutely.
I know.
And that, you know what? Hey, if I croak, pump me out the photon torpedo tube, just like they did Spock on Star Trek 2, But I just don't want to be away from them. But I thought, Andrew Ware wrote that book, The Martian, I think.
Yeah, The Martian.
And quite frankly, the movie followed the book pretty well. And I'm not saying I would really enjoy having to figure out how to take hydrazine and separate it into oxygen and hydrogen, but there would be worse ways to die.
It's really interesting, the writing of that book. So he was I think working at some computer firm at the time, and he was just writing on the side, releasing that as like
a serial almost.
Serial,
well, yeah.
And then it got really popular, and then
it's a good book.
Movie. Yeah,
it's a good. I really enjoyed reading that book. So that's and then you get the overprint. His crew coming back to get him and all this stuff, and I think it would be really neat to see what the real colors of Mars. Does it really have an atmosphere?
Very, very thin, from what I hear.
Well, it depends on what you read. Other people say, clouds, rain, and all. Where'd the water come from? Where'd the water go? You can see I've had enough geology that I know, it sure looks like there's been some rapidly flowing water here at some point.
At some point,
yeah. And it's scientifically, it's certainly not very deep in scientific inquiry, but
there's a cute little HP commercial where NASA lands the probe on Mars, and there's like this huge alien city in the background, and like the aliens are printing out little
in
front of the camera. And the probe starts to move a little, so they have to hurry up and print out the other one.
So no matter what the recording says, I'm not a tinfoil guy. But, I think we have to acknowledge that there's things that we don't understand. I as an evangelical Christian, I think that, there's plenty of things I don't understand. I accept on faith. And so, can I put faith in a box? Mm-hmm. Can I put it in that box? No, I can't. I can't. For evangelicals, there's this thing called the Holy Spirit that guides you and directs you So why did God Jacob he loved and Esau he hated? It doesn't say why. Why? Yeah, we can talk about free will versus predestination.
What's really amazing is, whenever you look at what Isaac versus Ishmael, and, depending upon which group of people you talk to, the story is completely flipped about which one was the promised child.
Absolutely.
It's really amazing.
There's another line of Abraham that has a completely different perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
And, and well, in my carnality, I'll say, I don't mean that in a bad way, I know that there's always different sides of stories.
Mm-hmm.
But in my faith, I accept that those words are the inspired word of God. And I simply, do I accept that just because that's the way I was raised and it was beat into me? Or do I believe that? Yeah, I believe that, but I believe it because of how I have seen God work in my own life. I have seen Him answer prayer. I have seen sick people healed. I have seen sick people die.
In terms of like the Bible, I find like the words in red are far more useful than like the genealogy.
I don't know. I always enjoy the begats.
The begats.
Yeah. Oh man, 13 years old. Oh.
So and so knew so and so and begat.
Yeah. No. Well, in Song of Solomon. Well, God help us. We never heard that one in church. So yeah, that's yeah. Well, boy, you're swabbing me down here, man.
Well, sorry, Bob.
Oh no, yeah, it's killing me. It's just killing me, as you can tell.
Yeah, under the hot lamp. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got the lie detector going.
No worry about that. It's just like an EKG.
Yeah.
It's flat. So what are you really doing this for?
I mean,
just for grins?
That is essentially it. I started out as just kind of like a cool little project, and then it kind of kept going. But I see it as a good way to connect with people. And
it's a great way to meet people.
A substantive conversation, beyond like how's the weather and
Well, yeah, it started at space. We've touched the scriptures, social issues. Yeah, we're not down to whether I'm a libertarian or Bernie supporter yet, but I think there's good elements of all of them.
I know
you figured that out already, haven't you?
It's a challenge. It's like, the thing is, I think the key is about feeling a personal responsibility to yourself and to the world around you versus feeling like a passenger. Are you going to be part of are you going to drive the bus or just simply sit on it? Like,
some of that comes down to your worldview too. It is ultimately shaped by your worldview, and I'm going to, I'll go on a limb. I wish I could speak with more authority here, but I think kind of the first derivative is monotheism. And I'm not referring to Krishna or Allah or Yahweh. Monotheism. And obviously there's huge differences between those, but if there is a God, I think that begins to change the social construct. And there's rules that come with that. Maybe different rules, maybe jihad or what. Yeah, but I've seen some Baptists on jihad too. Yeah,
true.
So after that, I can tell you that my neighbor, love them to death. They're Catholics. I think they are going to be sitting around the Master's table with me, enjoying new wine with Jesus. And they're strongly pro-life, to the point where Will actually started and funded a Catholic pregnancy center in the area that's really grown. And my wife and I have been significant financial supporters of pregnancy centers as well. I think there's plenty of alignment between, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and that's I'm not implying that that's specifically the case in a monotheistic world, but there's a lot of commonalities that as I was raised, ecumenicalism is a bad thing.
And what is ecumenicalism?
To me, it's commonality, trying to drive towards a single Catholic church or universal church.
A universal church.
Yeah, so that's how I would define it. And there's an awful lot of good that can come out of shared goals. And I think we miss that a lot. I think we could do a lot more good if we put aside our differences. Not every Protestant is preaching screaming on the street corner, and not every Jew is trying to circumcise everybody in the world, and not every Arab is trying to blow up a suicide vest.
Well, and Jews historically have been very kind of exclusionary, in the sense that not really going out there and trying to get everybody.
When they're in the majority, that's true.
Yeah.
But so have Catholics.
That's true too. Yeah. I mean, however, I guess if you look back at Spain and the New World and Portugal and the missionaries and stuff, and the question is how much of it's religious versus political.
Yeah. No, that's. And is there a difference?
Is there a difference? I know, because it's like if you can have one power center and one set of rules and drive everybody to that. I mean, that's an enormous
one world government.
One enormous way to kind of get a herd.
Well, and that's kind of where I have to step back and scratch my head a little bit. Yeah, you talk about kind of the beast and the Antichrist, what the characteristics are that lead into that, and one world government, is it a single currency? What is this mark of the beast? I'm really not a conspiracy guy. But it doesn't bother me as an engineer to take the end result and work backwards and say, okay, what could contribute to this being? Maybe I'm completely wrong. It's happened an awful lot, but I don't think there's any. Can I change Bible prophecy? Absolutely not. But also there were people waiting diligently for the birth of Jesus. Simon, the lady whose name eludes me, in the temple. That they were anxiously waiting and worshipped him as an infant. So, to me, that's no different than kind of, okay, yeah, I see the answer in the back of the book. What are the sorts of things that would get me there? And then you start looking for those characteristics.
No, it's.
But I'm securing my salvation, so it's which is no different than stepping through that garage door right there. Paul was exactly right to be absent from the body is to be present with the Father. You know, it's and you know, so that's my conviction. And you know, good things, bad things. You know, I might have a big old tumor growing in me right now, and some folks would say, you know, Bob said if you pray to be healed from that, and you're not, your God is dead. I'm like, okay, well, let's look at the second law of thermodynamics. This doesn't get better with time. You know, yeah. And you know, and so then why do we even exist? Well, you know that answer.
Well,
It's to glorify God.
You know, some people say, you know,
Yeah.
having people created is like having like a play of Shakespeare created by having monkeys randomly type on typewriters. But yet, how much more random, unlikely it is to randomly create like Shakespeare. You know, it's like.
Well, you know, it's. I don't have to be able to do the statistics. You know, I know that it ain't gonna happen. So you know, that's. I guess that's the other thing that kind of overprints everything we've talked about here. Is as a believer, I'm convinced I know how this ends, and there is a whole measure of security that comes with that for me. Yeah, you know what? I screwed up. I screw up a lot, but my beliefs are that, you know, my belief is in Jesus Christ. And he says, you know, Bob, that's okay. That's okay. You're not perfect, but I make you perfect. Yeah, you get a free pass, Bob. You get a free pass. Here it is right here. You don't get a red card. You get a green card. So, and so we can sit here and talk about space, which is really just a tool to get into all these other things that you pulled out of me. But you know, that's why it wouldn't bother me to go to Mars. I want to go. Selfishly, yeah, I want my granddaughters, grandsons. But yeah, I know how this ends, and it doesn't matter whether it ends for me physically on Mars or Venus or wherever.
Let's say you and your grandchildren all go to Mars, and it's 200 years in the future.
Oh, you yeah.
Your great,
you
great,
will
great,
not be dissuaded, will you?
And your great, 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 great. I'm not sure how many greats it takes to get 200 years in the future, but she's really great.
Yeah.
She's in high school, in a history class, and for whatever reason, she's doing a project on the 2020s. What do you hope she can write about this decade in 200 years?
Oh, yeah. So what I wish she could write is that this is the first decade that we really viewed each other with equality. You know, it's and by equality I mean not using perceived or existing differences to for separate agendas. You know, I really don't care who you sleep with. I don't. I don't care who you sleep with. You know, it's you don't tell me who I can love and who I can't love. I'm not going to tell you who you can love and who you can't love. You know, my belief system, you know, might direct me one way or another, but you know, I'm not your God. I'm not your judge. You know, and I'm not going to pretend to know what's best for you. You know, you know what? I got a buddy down the street who's a different nationality. You know, yellow, black, green, purple. You know, 2020 was a year. It was a generation, the decade that said, you know, it doesn't matter the color of his skin. That man gave me blood. That man, you know, gave me his kidney. That man loved me for who I am, not for what I could do for him. Yeah, so That's what I'd want Miss Caroline, Miss Claire, Miss Avery, Mr. Graham, Miss Brooke, and Mr. Cole to say. Yeah, that was a good time.
That's cool. I hope
Yeah.
I hope they can write that about this
I
decade.
wish they could. You and I both know that it ain't gonna happen.
We're only 2 years into it. We got 8 more years.
Yeah.
We got opportunity here. Can still happen.
Well, yeah, but it's as long as there's, well, there again, you know how it ends, and how it ends is that everybody has kind of come to that. One world government.
Well, there's a difference between one world government and a set of universally recognized laws.
Oh,
and
absolutely. Or dare I say, morality.
morality.
Which is not the Geneva Convention. Absolutely.
It'd be good to have a global rule set of what norms and stuff are. Well, anyway, maybe this is a good spot.